And it's going to freeze again tonight.
Is it? I didn't even look. I looked to see if the temperatures were going to be okay to prune, but I
Or
didn't
to
look at what.
prune.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many things that need pruning now. I have for so many years have scheduled, have chosen to grow things that need to be pruned, knowing that I can prune them in the wintertime. And this year, forget it. There's been, I did manage to catch one pruning period, but anytime that it's been warmer, warm enough for long enough to qualify for a pruning period, it's been wet. And you can't prune when it's wet. So there we are.
And my whole backyard is ice.
Yeah,
Even on the grass, it's all ice.
yeah, indeed.
Not much, but just enough to get you sliding.
Yeah. It was an school was closed yesterday. So I ended up with my granddaughter. She's on the left there. That's Aubrey and her friends, Lily and Sophia from across the street. And we baked cookies together. It's very interesting. And I wouldn't turn it down for the world when Bree texted me and said, "Can I come over and maybe I can play with Sophia and Lily?" Of course you can. Drop everything you're gonna do and see what we've got to make cookies with. These girls cracked up over the word spatula. They had not heard spatula before, and they just shrieked with laughter when I handed them. I said, "Okay, now you're going to use a spatula to scrape the side of the bowl." They laughed so hard that I told them, the two girls, the Sophia and Lily, live kitty corner across the street from me. I said, "I think we're going to name our next dog Spatula, so I can lean out the door and say, 'Spatula, come here,' and hear you guys laugh." It was just such fun laughing. It just makes everything go by quicker. Hey, Carol. Oh man. I also spent a wicked evening at the gymnastics meet. Boy, sitting on a high school bench, in the bleachers in the gymnasium. My butt was so sore. But just watching these girls do this is my oldest granddaughter, Autumn. Watching what they do, just amazing. And actually, it was amazing that I was able to catch her. This is part of one of those photos that's like a miniature video. If you hold your finger on it, it's more than just one photo. And I froze this from it. But I was amazed that I could manage to catch it clear across the gym. And it only lasts for 2 seconds. Anyway, it's been a interesting week of doing things other than gardening. This jigsaw puzzle, have you done this kind of jigsaw puzzle before? You do the jigsaw puzzle, and then after you get it done, it slides apart on these lines and forms a parallelogram here in the middle, where you now have a mystery package of other pieces that you put together to find out what the center part of the puzzle is. It's pretty cool. And it's also cool, that's my son and daughter-in-law and the grandkids. They have a new jigsaw puzzle board that has these drawers that you pull out so that you can put your pieces on it. It's really very nice. And that way you can put the jigsaw puzzle away. I always have to put a piece of plexiglass or plastic on top of a puzzle just to cover the table and be able to use the table for something else. Pretty neat arrangement. The center mystery of this one was that there was a tree ant in charge of everything that was going on in the puzzle. Let's see. Am I miserable outside today? Looks like snow, but it's ice. Every divot there, every footprint there is an ice channel. It's just, you can't even walk on it. Even the dogs are slipping and sliding trying to walk. And where we usually go up at the high school, we go onto the soccer field there to throw the frisbee for them. No way, not going down that hill. You're gonna skid your way down. If you manage to stay upright, you're lucky. What a time. Serviceberry, Allegheny. So Chris, you're looking at catalogs for serviceberry saplings. Allegheny, so serviceberry is Amelanchier, or Canadensis. Amelanchier alleganensis is more of a tree, and canadensis tends to be shorter and maybe more multi-stemmed. Juneberry is just a common name for them. Downy is lavis, and it's also a tree form. I think the leaf is a little bit smaller. There isn't a lot of difference between them, not in terms of ornamentation. The problem if you're growing for fruit, then you probably want one that's been chosen for berries and is going to be called Juneberry, or there are only a few of them so far because it's a native plant that has not had a lot of selection for fruit bearing, some selection for ornament. So there's a couple that turn a nicer color in the fall. I think they all turn a nice color, but some that maybe are more consistent. But I don't have any opinions other than that. Which one is the one there's one that's a running bush and has supposedly the best fruit on it. So it's not a tree at all. It's a shrub about, and it's stolonifera. I think it's Amelanchier stolonifera. But I would have to go with the description that comes with them, or if you want to give me a particular variety name, because the species are not all that different or all that consistent. Within each species, there's a lot of variation. You get taller ones, shorter ones, better flower, better fruit, better fall color. I don't know that there's been much done with disease resistance, picking service berries for disease resistance, but that would be important too, because they can get apple scab and cedar apple rust. They generally don't get it very bad, but this year they did get it. Looks like no other questions. Anybody's got a question?
Hello.
Hello, Stephen. You're
Are
listening.
you showing the icy field?
Yeah, I was telling people that you don't dare go down that slope. Even the dog has her reservations about going down the slope. I just was running through what we did this week, the gymnastics meet and the baking the cookies with the kids and making a jigsaw puzzle. And Chris was asking about our opinion on the different service berries. There's the common names are listed in the chat. But I think it's Amelanchier lavis and Alleganensis and Canadensis that she's looking at, and I don't have a real good opinion between them. In fact, didn't Mike Durr tell us that they're really mixed up in the trade, and that
It's also hard to tell them apart, even if some of the hybrids now are three-way crosses, could by the time they get done.
Yeah, I think I remember him saying that for the most part, you're probably getting Canadensis is that what he said? I think but that they're pretty mixed up. That the nurseries I've got them mislabeled anyway, but pretty similar. Oh, Chris has been sliding around too. Turkeys were sliding. That must have been actually kind of funny to watch as birds sliding around. Our birds were hungry. Boy, were they hungry. Eating up a storm today.
Yeah, they did. They ate a lot of stuff.
And Sonia said she put out a lot, 2 whole containers of salt, and even though her driveway's in the sun, the ice stayed on it. I don't know how much I used out there. I feel bad using it. We use the de-icer that is not based on sodium in order to try to have less sodium buildup in the soil. Sodium is terrible in the soil. It breaks down the structure of the soil and makes it dense and not drain well, and it also can burn root tips. So you don't want to use the regular rock salt. So we'll get them ones that are based on magnesium or not phosphorus, potassium. And even those, you don't want to use a lot of something that has a salt in it, because it's going to take water away from the cells of plants and other organisms that are in the soil. But this year, had to do it. I do say though that I didn't have to use the snow rake at all this year so far. I haven't had to stand there with 15 or 18 feet of pole over my head pulling snow off of the eaves, because we haven't had that much. Although I'm not sure who's here tonight. Peggy and in Massachusetts, and Jennifer in the Boston area, they're looking at getting 8 inches of snow this weekend. I'm jealous, and they're not happy about it. Where do
Well,
we?
it's a little bit different as crowded as it is on the East Coast when they get hammered compared to us, I think. Where do they put the snow on some of the
Yeah, Peggy said she
uh,
just listens to backup alarms all night long because the trucks work on it all night long because they can't work any other time.
yep. Nancy is asking, where do we get our very tall bird feeder poles? I want to deter the deer. What we did with our tallest one, which is in our front yard, is that we put in a 10-foot pipe first and then put the feeder shepherd's hook on in that. So we added about, what do we put it down, 3 feet, Janet?
4 feet.
Maybe it was an 8-foot pipe.
10 foot. I buy a 10 foot section of black iron pipe, and Steve holds it with a level on it, making sure that we're pounding it in straight, and then I go up the ladder with a post driver, I think it's called. It's a metal can with handles on it that you pound down. And we pound it down until it's 6 feet tall. And then you know how the shepherd's hook crook has two prongs in it so that it's steady when it goes into the ground. We put the center one into the pipe and it holds it just fine. Now we end up
Yep.
with the other hook, the stabilizing part at the bottom of the shepherd's hook is sitting out and could potentially have somebody run into it. I put a tennis ball on it for a while.
Now we're used to it, but somebody could still run into it. And the pole, the squirrels jump from the roof onto the pole, and the pole wobbles a lot, moves in the wind a lot, but I think it's not going to break.
No, it's not going anywhere.
And all of our other poles are easily within deer reach. We just don't have many deer come through here, except for the ones on my deck.
Not the one by the deck. The squirrels can't
Yeah.
get that one very easily.
Yeah.
And yeah, we'll get some pictures of it and show you how to do that because it is a way to keep them away from the deer anyway. Shall we get started, Stephen?
Sure.
Go ahead.
So, good evening and welcome to Free for All Friday, number 30. We're coming to you from gardenataz.org.
Everybody's welcome. We're celebrating growing or cultivating problem solving. I'm Janet McConovich.
I'm Stephen Nicola.
And we've been doing gardening. We did garden professionally for 40 years and wrote and taught about gardening. We are officially retired, but unofficially still having a great time in our own garden and friends and gardens, people that we promised that when we had a chance, we'd help them out. We're still helping out. And we love talking to gardeners because it's such a privilege to hear what's going on in so many other different gardens that we wouldn't possibly have the time in one lifetime to garden in so many places, but we meet people that we can help for a little bit and then they can tell us what happens further down the way. So we've been putting that into our website, gardenataz.org, and we're trying to get all the things that we've written into there and keep track of them. We'll show you some of that today. We started the Free for All Fridays, well, 30 Fridays ago, more than 30 Fridays ago, because we don't quite hit every Friday, because it keeps us more in touch. We found we weren't able to do a webinar every single week. It was just too taxing to keep up that pace and develop all that material, but we still wanted to have a place to talk to people, and we wanted to have a way to offer people a, for sure, line of communication with great gardeners. There is such a great deal of experience in these people who are sitting on your participants and chat list. They've probably, most of them, been gardening for 20, 30, 40 years, maybe even longer than that, and have seen so many things that other people haven't seen, and it runs that way like dominoes all through the group. So there's thousands of years experience here, and we'd like it if people will ask questions in chat or you can email us anytime. So did anyone who's on in the group right now, do you have a question before we launch into things that we have come in earlier in the week?
Nothing has showed up in chat.
Okay.
Um,
And we'll assume that other people are also on the slow side right now that they are also doing jigsaw puzzles and avoiding walking down their own walkway for fear of sliding into the driveway of the
And
car.
Nancy has a hand up.
Hey, Nancy, why don't you go
Go
ahead?
ahead.
So another question for the really tall bird feeders. So how do you end up filling the canisters or containers when they're 10 feet high?
We should have
Have you seen the jousting?
plans.
Well,
I took a 10-foot section. Is it 10 feet? I think it's 10 feet, Steve.
I think it is.
I took a 10-foot section of PVC pipe. It's about an inch and a half pipe. It's handleable. You can hold it in your hands. And I screwed a hook like you'd hang a coat onto the far end of it, and we put the pole up and hook the feeder and bring it down. It's a bit of a acquired skill letting it slide down to you, but it works pretty well. It works for us anyway.
Yeah, it's there's other methods, pulleys and that. My son hung one in a tree, and they use a pulley system to get it up and down to keep the squirrels out from it or the deer away from it. So, but with ours, we just have that PVC. We have a rather heavy one on the front right now, heavy feeder, and that the PVC really does bend. So if we go, if we need another piece, we'd get a little heavier one, I think, next time.
Maybe you would. I think I've got all the weight that I can handle with that. It's kind of a workout, and it's interesting for me with the tremor. If I knock the feeder and the pole sways a little bit and my hands are trembling, it can be a little bit of a deal to get the hook into the right place, but I consider it a challenge.
Shoot, even without any trimmer, it's a challenge, but
Yeah.
it's part of the fun.
Yep. Well, we have what looks like 9 things here set up that I'll just run through in order unless somebody has a question that they want to ask about things. Oh, do I wish that there was some green things to look at out there, or more green things than there are. More evergreens, more evergreens. We had a question last week at our webinar about a hydrangea and making more of an Annabelle hydrangea. And in answering that question after the webinar, I sent some information to the person who asked the question. And I sent it to a couple of people, not knowing which Jennifer I was sending to. And I ended up with another question about a different kind of an hydrangea. So for those of you who have some of these very nice hydrangeas, Quick Fire, for instance, is one of the panicle hydrangeas. Annabelle, and what did we just hear is the one that's so wonderful, Steve? Ah,
Oh, the one that the guy from Chicago talked about, that's not
that attracted more pollinators than anything else.
it had HHH.
Hoffs. We'll find the name of that one later, but if you have a hydrangea, they are very easy to make more hydrangeas from them. You can take a cutting or you can lay a branch down to make a layer. A layer is what plants do on their own. This is a drawing that I made for one of our newsletters of what lavender does. A branch that is coming out of the side of the main clump and has to grow horizontally for a bit in order to get into the sun, tends to scrape on the ground, and the scraping on the ground and the contact with moist soil causes it to grow roots. So all you have to do is sever the connection between the mother plant and you've got another plant. That's called layering. And a lot of plants do it naturally. Red twig dogwoods are one of the plants out to take over the world by layering. Those branches that I've arrowed there are just like that lavender branch. We're coming out horizontally, they're lax, they're laying on the ground, and they've formed their own roots. So if you can get a sharp instrument in between the outermost trunks and one of the inner ones, you can saw off and pull and loosen and pull the roots out and have another red twig dogwood. Now, this is an Annabelle snowball hydrangea. This is the species, or as close to the species as we could find, of hydrangea arborescens, which gives us the snowball hydrangea. Annabelle, I can't remember the names of any of them because I don't like the great big ones. They fall.
Incredible and
Incredible, right?
Yeah.
I actually
Go
stole
on.
these plants from one client with her permission to take to another client because we wanted just the straight species. If you notice, it's not a very good picture. It's my picture, Steve. Sorry,
No, you don't ever say that. You just say, don't even say it's not a very good picture. Just keep doing.
okay. The flowers are a flat cluster. They're not a great big ball, and they have more central fertile flowers. They're better for pollinators. They have a ring like a lace cap around the outside. That's what we wanted to put into the garden. And this hydrangea, which looks like it's leaning over, is leaning over. Whoops. This was a layer off of the hydrangea at Virginia's house that I took to Sue's house. So I went between this one and the mother plant and cut down with my spade to cut between them, and then levered outward in order to loosen the roots and brought this one over. It will now grow upright now that it's got sun and warmth here on the buds on this part of the branches and the crown. It'll grow upright now the next year. So this is a natural layer, and the Annabelle type hydrangeas, the snowball hydrangeas, are famous for forming thickets. I've seen them 10, 12, 15 feet across where they just keep on going. So it's always easy to get a piece off of them. It's not so easy to get the piece, a natural layer off of the hydrangea paniculatas. That's Quickfire, Little Lamb, Limelight.
Limelight, yeah.
Those tend to be a tighter crown. This is a crown that we'd taken apart at Mark's house because the plants were not growing well. And I suspected, and we found that these roots had been wrapped all around and were girdling. So we're loosening the roots, and it lets us take a look at the crown. So we have much more of a central crown where you get new trunks coming from right down here. Given enough time growing in one place, these will also get layers because they'll get branches that are thinner and reaching for the light and going horizontally. So you can eventually get, this one's got roots of its own growing to the side. But you can look for a natural layer, or you can take a branch that is lax, bend it down to the ground, scrape the underside of the branch so that it's injured. An injury causes the plant to make new cells there, new meristem cells, and because they form where it's moist and dark, they form root structures rather than forming leaves. So you bend it down, scrape the part that's going to be against the ground, bury it so it stays down, or put a brick or a rock on it. And then I tell people to make sure to turn the tip upright so that the plant has dominance and starts growing upright. And then you can separate that once it grows roots. That was part of our newsletter number 43, making a cutting and layering the vine. So if you wanted to look that one up, you can find it by looking up what's up 43, or by layer or cutting, and that would be one of the options that would come up. Works really well, and it's kind of fun to do. And a lot of shrubs do it very readily. And while I was looking, this happens. Michelle has laughed at me. She told me that going onto our website is sometimes like falling down Alice in Wonderland's rabbit hole, that you can't find out how you got down to where you got. I was looking through that issue to see what was there and thought, oh, that was a fun issue. It was all about slopes and holding, keeping things from erosion, which ways to do it, making a zigzag path, putting collection bases and trenches, making a terrace. We've had a lot of fun playing with hills. Sometimes it's not fun actually while we're up on the hill. Do you remember?
It's not fun actually working on the hill,
That's
too.
right. You remember
Designing is fun. Thinking about it is fun. Seeing the result is fun. And so is the work, but you have to be careful. So the fun is not crazy, woohoo fun.
Yeah, we were working on Vincent's Hill. Remember, we were talking about maybe we could go to Tibet and learn how to do this on a hill, how to terrace this hill more efficiently, and we could write that off as we never did do that. But I felt like I had one leg longer than the other the whole time that we were doing that. So that information is there, and I'll review again how to find those newsletters a little bit later.
The hydrangea we're trying to think the name of, Haas Halo, right?
Haas Halo, yes.
They're hard to find, and at the Chicago Botanic Gardens, they were the best pollinators.
No, at
Contractor.
Wave Hills, no, not Wave Hill, Cuba, Mount Cuba.
Mount Cuba's test, sorry.
Yes, they did an extensive test of which of the hydrangea arborescens got the most pollinators. Did someone have a Haas halo? Did someone contribute that?
Well, RK Michigan mentioned maybe Haas Halo when I said we couldn't when we were talking about not remembering the name.
Okay, so since you know Haas halo, what we want to know is we want to find somebody who has one, because finding one is really hard, and getting a cutting from one would be gold. I would throw out, we have one that we inherited here. It was just here, and it's kind of nice. It's one of those pink ball type ones. It's not a lace cap. It's just a Annabelle that turns kind of pinkish after it's been open for a bit. Although it's a nice plant, I would flip it out of the place and put in a Haas halo in a minute in order to make our pollinator garden better.
Yeah, we're hoping to travel a little bit more around this summer and stuff. We'll be checking nurseries, just walking in looking for it.
We're trying not to do what some of our friends do, which is come home every time they go out with a car stuffed full of plants. I don't know where.
Unfortunately, we have a van too. Our case is they looking for it, but they're looking for it. They don't have it. So,
Okay, well, just let us.
and Tree says she started a lilac like the layering. Thank you.
Yeah, especially the older lilacs. Sometimes those old stems are so full of borers that you can definitely revive the lilac by starting it from a layer to the side. The really old lilacs, some of them, it was pretty common in the 30s and 40s to graft lilac onto privet roots because they're in the same family. It took very quickly, and the privet grew faster than the lilacs would. So there are some very old lilacs that are really cool. Some of the deep dark purples and some of the doubles of the French hybrids that are getting decrepit on top. And the only way to really keep them going is to make cuttings or to layer them. Definitely don't take the sprouts from below. I've talked to so many people over the years who said, my lilac now, it has just small white flowers and they don't smell so good. So that's because they're privet flowers. The rootstock has overtaken the lilac. Okay, so you can do a layer or you can do a cutting, and you can cut all kinds of woody plants. The cutting issue came up when Lori asked about cutting a piece of their Schefflera down in Florida where they winter and rooting it. And yes, that's easy to do. You're not going to take a cutting of brand new green. You want green that is stiff enough to snap if you bend it. So you could take a cutting where you might cut here. And once you cut there, you're going to pull this leaf right off. That's going to be your injury. And you're going to cut off that little new one that's coming because it's not going to be able to support that new growth. It's just not. It's too lax and it's going to wilt. So you're going to cut it right here, pull the leaf off, then stick it into a moist potting soil. I tend to use sand and potting mix so that there's enough weight to hold it up, so that this part that you've injured is below ground. And then when it's in the moist, dark situation like that, roots will start growing from here. And Schefflera's umbrella tree, they're sometimes called, they root very readily. So you can do cuttings. Most cuttings you want to do are 4, 6, maybe 8 inches. Everybody has seen where you stick a stick in the ground that's 5 feet tall and it leafs out. But you're much better off to take a shorter cutting so that the plant can more quickly start multiplying and doesn't have to keep supporting all the wood that's there. Steve, tell him about Uncle Eldon and his snow sticks.
I'm sorry, what was that?
Tell him about Great Uncle Eldon and his snow sticks. Every year, marking for the snow plow. They lived in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan.
Totally not remembering what. Sorry.
And the snow really builds up there, or can, where you might have 8 feet of snow built up, and especially along the side of the road where the toot grinders, which are like giant truck-sized snow blowers, make a wall of snow. So Eldon would cut saplings in the woods, 10, 12-foot saplings, and stick them in along the edge of the road so that the plow drivers, the toot grinder drivers, would know where the road was. And invariably, one or more of them would root. So everybody knows that that happens sometimes, but you don't really want to see that happen all the time. So in the same issue, what's coming up, number 43, after layering, we included the instructions to take the cutting for a softwood cutting. And softwood means that it has not got bark yet, but firm enough to snap. You clip off a tip, maybe you have 6 leaves, tear off the bottom 2 leaves, or the bottom 1 leaf, in that Scheffler was big enough. You might want to dip the wounded stem into some rooting hormone, but it's not necessary to buy rooting hormone. Then you insert it into moist sand or potting mix. You can, to keep it from wilting, I often build a tent around it with a clear plastic bag and some straws stuck around the cutting to hold the plastic up off the cutting, and then wait for roots. When the tip starts growing again, you know there are roots. Or you can pull on the trunk to see, on the thing that you cut, to see what happened. I don't know where this one came from, Steve, but I just liked the colors, the Harlequin kind of colors of the leaf hopper here.
I would have to look back at that time I was cataloging, so I would at least know where it was taken.
Yeah. It's
But they were cool.
yeah. And
No other
amazingly,
questions
amazingly, they're alive out there. They are.
Oh, somebody asked where in the UP Uncle Eldon was. Houghton Hancock area, town just out of Houghton called Oscar is where they live.
Oscar. Yeah. Wonderful people. But out there in the garden right now, inside shrubs, in the debris from gardens, inside stems, there are eggs, there are larvae, there are, has anyone else seen the spiders that are moving very slowly but are out there? It's amazing that they can live out there. We're always amazed that the birds make it out there the way they do. Now, there's one other way you can do that Scheffler that Lori asked about, and for this I sent her pictures from a book. It's called air layering. I've only done it once and found it to be too long and not too drawn out an operation for me. But what you're doing is you're conning a bigger plant to root from a trunk. So if you've got a big Schefflera, so when I was down in Florida, I was just amazed at house plants as trees. If you've got a big Schefflera and you say, but I don't want to take just a little cutting, some people are not very impatient. They say, I want to cut that stem and have a big chunk, or that one down there, or can I cut that one and root the whole thing? It's very hard for one stem, even a stem that's that thick in diameter, to draw up enough water to keep the roots that are, the leaves that are there alive without any roots. And it takes time for it to grow roots. But if you can keep it attached to the mother plant and do an air layer, you can get it to grow roots. Now, this comes from the American Horticultural Society's plant propagation book. They have very good diagrams in it, and the diagrams are followed by lists of plants, individual plants that say, now that you've learned this technique, this plant in alphabetical order, ABs, for instance, for fir might be first, we would do it by a tip cutting, or we would do this by a layer. So these are the pages that you look back to learn what a layer is. But what you do with a layer is you take some of the non-bark covered wood and you're going to injure it. See the injury going on here? And then you're going to pack moist moss in the injury and around it, seal the whole thing in plastic so that the moss stays moist. And then after a while, and that was the problem with me, I kept having to unwrap the thing to see if it was growing roots. You end up with roots in the moss and can cut that part loose. That's called air layering. And this is being done on a rhododendron. So the technique, steps are the same, but you don't bring the branch down to the ground. You let it form roots up in the air. And that might work well in Florida for the Schefflera that Lori's working. So it's a very good book. The American Horticultural Society took many of the Dorling Kinderly publishers' books that they did for the Royal Horticultural Society in England, and the American Horticultural Society modified them to fit American regions and terminology, etc. So if you happen to find the Royal Horticultural Society's book on this, you're getting the same good deal. This guy's so cute.
Nothing new yet.
Did we talk about what I was reading about hummingbirds, that there's one flower. This would be an Asian hummingbird and an Asian flower that has a trigger inside the flower. So when the hummingbird visits it, it literally propels pollen at a great rate at the head of the hummingbird, knocking off pollen that was from another plant and replacing it with its pollen.
There's
Plants.
pollen all over the head on that hummingbird right now.
Yeah, yeah. But they found it was very effective. It was a evolutionary trick to
Yep.
be the one that got pollinated. Lightning bug on dill. Lightning bugs are very cool. Lightning bugs go through a metamorphosis like caterpillars turn into butterflies. Lightning bugs begin as a larvae that's called a glowworm. And the glowworm is predatory on just about any other insect. They're just eating up stuff at ground level on the plants. The lightning bug itself usually is just feeding on pollen and lighting up the night for us. But they're good guys to have around.
Teresa's asking, did you learn that in the lie eaters? I think she meant light eaters.
Light eaters. No, it wasn't in light eaters. It was in something. I'm sorry. I get to reading things, and even while I'm reading them, I couldn't tell you without looking at the book what the title is or who the author is. I can find out for you, but I know that it was after I read Light Eaters. I read it someplace else. Where was it? Oh, it might have. I might not have read that one. No, I think I did. But I might have read a radio article on shortwave or Radio Lab. Too many inputs. What I think is cool here is Steve caught the feeding tube of the butterfly down into the nectar. And what's great is when the butterfly first comes out of the chrysalis, this is in two pieces that knit together like a Ziploc bag. Pretty cool.
Are lightning bugs considered pollinators?
Yes, they are pollinators and beneficials. It's cold outside, but
It is chilly.
But take it as an alarm. It's time to trim the hellebores if you like your hellebores to look neater. So this picture is very early spring. I'm working in a client's garden here, and this is the hellebore area. I've got one hellebore cut down now, and I'm cutting all of the old leaves away so that they are not distracting. They are evergreen hellebores, but they're evergreen for a year, and then a new leaf comes out. So these are not going to green back up. They're going to remain looking gray and tattered. And I don't like that around the hellebores in a controlled garden like this. I think they look prettier when they come up just by them, the flower stalks by themselves. The new leaves follow afterwards. I can see a new leaf coming right here under this clump. So I have found that because I like to see the flowers by themselves, that this is the time of year to cut them, because the buds, here's the flower stalks on this. This is a fairly young hellebore. It's only going to have 3 flower stalks on it. These flower stalks are still tight to the ground. They have not started coming up and getting in the way. I can very easily reach in with my clippers and clip the stems of the old leaves away. And that's what I want to do. I want to clip that stem as close to the base as I can so I don't have debris building up in there. This one, waiting until March, the flower buds, these are the flower stalks that are coming up already, and they get in the way. It makes it much more tedious to try to reach in and cut those stems, and I can't cut them all the way back. So you have to cut these stems, but I didn't cut them all the way back because I would have damaged flower stalks coming up or broken them off. This one was probably damaged a little. You can see the discoloration on it. So it probably broke off easily, snapped off when I touched it because it was infected with a fungus. When they get damaged in the winter, that's what happens. They get discolored. And it's
That-
not, yeah,
That leads to a question that Diane asked. So hellebores don't need any dead leaves for cold weather protection?
if that's a concern to you, see, these are not protected. If you really look at where the flower buds are in the center here, they are not very well protected. They're not covered by the leaves, but they are getting some benefit from the warmth that stays in the ground underneath the leaves out here. And so if they're out in an exposed area and you want to protect those buds, you can just take some evergreen branches, just the little ones, lightweight, and lay them down across the top of them. It doesn't exclude all the light, and they will grow up through them, or you can take those off. But I want to take the branches, the leaves off. This is a hellebore that probably isn't going to bloom this year. I don't see any flower buds. It's in a place that's very windy. I didn't realize it was a wind tunnel when I put it there. And it has bloomed, but not heavily. I don't want, and I should move it, but with that aside, if it was not blooming well, or even if it had flower buds, I would want to cut these off because these discolored stems and that damaged stem right there become sites where botrytis can get into the stem, and it will, like with peonies, travel through the stem and end up infecting the crown of your hellebore. I've had to rescue several plantings of hellebores that got where the flower buds were coming up and rotting rather than opening up. So you want to take away discolored leaves in order to keep the plant from becoming unhealthy. Some hellebores are hard to do. This one must have a lot of, there are a lot of different plant hellebore species involved in most of the types that we grow. We grow Helleborus cross orientalis, which is a mix of different crosses. Helleborus niger is Christmas rose. It's earlier blooming, and this one must have a lot of the genetics of Christmas rose in it, because here it is. This was in December, and the flower stalks have already begun coming up out of the ground. So this one, they're in the way. You can't beat the timing on this one. Fortunately, most of the time the foliage can look pretty good on a Christmas rose until blooming time. But I want fresh new foliage. This hellebore has already bloomed. This is the one that I was showing you a minute ago. Not many flower stalks. It's already bloomed, and now the new leaves are coming up and matching the height of the flower stalks themselves about June. But this year, sorting out one of those like this, and it has I don't know if I got stuck in there or there's a Solomon seal coming up right through it. They're fighting out with all the other plants out there and all the snow. It makes it hard to even see where the stems are. But it's about time to start thinking about doing that.
No new questions.
One of the clear wing moths here. And they still just keep on coming even when the snow's on them. While you're out looking around, because this time of year with the light being low, with the days being short, and everybody being, well, myself, being impatient for better outdoor times, I call that the winter blahs, and it can get under your skin so that you look out there and go, I got to clean that up. If you're a wildlife gardener, and Stephen and I are wildlife gardeners.
For sure.
Yeah, we do not clean up the garden until it's late spring. Sometimes we don't even clean up an area at all, because there is such a benefit to so many different organisms to have cover, to have shade, to have food, because these things are being eaten by decomposers. In my book, Caring for Perennials, I explain how we cut things down in the fall to save time. That's in a controlled garden. So my garden over by the patio, which is our perennial garden, I can be neat and tidy and cut things back and make it look good for me. But in our wildlife garden, I want things to grow, including the organisms that live there. Now, these pockets around these penstemon are there in part because the wind patterns, but in part because the plant is shading the soil and protecting the soil, and it's actually a little bit warmer there. So you'll find things living in the crowns of the plants over the winter time, protected by the tops that are left up there. And birds find perches on the cupped plant stems, which are really in just one place. And they don't take all that long to get out of the way later on. Cup plant and Vernonia and Astra are over here. The seed heads, the birds are still picking apart. The insects that are on them and the insect eggs that are within the crowns, the birds are picking apart. And this whole area is also protected and warmer. As you get back underneath those bare branches, you get less and less snow because they're protecting it from the snow cover and also keeping it warmer. It's just like for us, we walk into the woods in the wintertime and we walk bent into the wind with our nose freezing off our face across the field. We step into the woods and there's no wind and it's 5 degrees warmer or 10 degrees warmer. It's wonderful. So this is the time of year to be looking and saying, do I have enough evergreens out there? Because that's what I need. I need to have green to look at. I'm very glad that our dwarf white pines are taking and our hedges are growing up over here. It's going to be a great area when it's finally time to take this spruce, the 2 spruces out of there and let the
Oh,
sun.
I can't wait.
Yeah. Well,
We'll wait, but
yeah, we have to
can't wait.
Yeah. No questions?
Marvin just says, thank you for the tip. I am now using that tip in his rain garden in the back 40.
Oh, great.
Yep.
Marvin's got about every cool garden in the world in it. Oh, Marvin's going to be at the ArborCon, where the arborists and the forestry and parks people and the educators from Michigan State and arboriculture, tree lore, tree knowledge, tree science meet. And we're hoping we can see Marvin's talk because it has to do with what we try to help people do. Is maybe, I think we asked you already, Marvin, whether you would do this as a webinar for us, but about planting trees so that you're not endangering your roof, but you're still getting the benefit that the trees can give you and not getting roots in your pipes. It's an interesting thing to try to balance all the different effects that a tree can have and get the good ones without the bad. Downy or hairy, Steve? I always forget which one's the little.
Downy, they're smaller.
What?
The hairies would be he would be at that wire that's above the head.
Oh, that much bigger. Okay.
Yeah, they're quite a bit bigger.
Now we have a question for everybody here, and you don't have to answer it right away. We'd like you to think about it because we've been thinking, and we're composing our webinar, new one on garden legacy. Do you have some ideas in your mind of what your garden legacy will be? Most gardeners would love to know that their garden will keep on going after them. But is there something in particular that you think will continue after you in the garden, in the environment around you, in your connections? If you have ideas that you'd like to email us, if you've got any photos of something that you think is a great garden legacy, yours or someone else's, let us know. We'll be, see when that's March 1st. So probably for the next week or 10 days, we can take new things in, and we'd love to do that. Our subscribers tune into the webinars, but anyone who contributes to this webinar will give you an invitation in, even if you're not one of our regular Weekend Walkabout subscribers. We just think the whole idea is worth reviewing, worth looking into, and gardeners talking about together.
Indeed.
What will be your legacy?
I have a question in from Diane.
Okay, go ahead, Diane.
What a beautiful picture. My rose leaves fell very late and there's a large pile under the plant. When should I clear them out to eliminate rose sawfly eggs, etc.? And should I leave it bare underneath?
As soon as you can clean them out, you should clean them out because some of those things begin adding up degree days starting in March. So the sooner you can get them out, the better. Should you leave it bare? There's controversy about that, about whether or not it has much effect at all to leave it bare versus put some mulch on it. I would always rather see mulch on it in order to keep the soil moisture and keep it from getting beat up by the spring rains, because that can really pummel the particles of soil and knock them apart into little grains that become too dense surface layer. But I don't know how far away rose sawflies lay their eggs. I've seen when I was watching this, the ants taking them, they could be 3-4 feet away from the plant. So I don't know. This is one of those citizen science things. If we could somehow count the numbers that we have and see how many we get the next year, depending on what we do. And then someone would tell us that the environment is not well enough controlled in a home garden, so we can't learn anything. I can't really answer.
And perhaps there might have been some beginning of black spot or something like that on some of the leaves that you might not have noticed.
Yeah, the
It'd be a good time to clean out.
The English gardeners that we talk to in rose gardens in England, in public rose gardens, go out every morning through the season. They pick up every leaf as it falls, and wear cotton gloves to try to absorb the moisture rather than transfer it around. They're meticulous, and they don't spray very much and keep them looking nice. This is always, I think this is an abomination. If you put it out because it's evergreen, then why do you cover it up in the winter since you got to look at this? Some designer must have decided they wanted to hide that, or some people must have asked.
They sure framed it well.
Yeah, so put something out there that can handle the winter if it's evergreen. Just silliness, total silliness.
Which that plant probably could. That's underneath there.
Yeah, I think it's an arbor. I think they're arborvitae.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Might turn a little brown, but
Yeah. Speaking of arborvitaes, this is what we always get a lot of questions about in the winter, and have this year, especially after having a little bit of ice on them. If you've got multiple leaders on an arborvitae, they're probably going to splay in the winter, and that's not something that can be stopped. If we want to talk about this, I need to have a show of hands, and I'll come back to it, because it's kind of a diversion from what we got set up in the first place.
nothing.
Okay. If people are not particularly interested in it, you might want to just keep in mind that if you put in to Garden A to Z prop, your search results, the first one's going to come up and show you how to fix the arbor that's like that, which involves cutting out multiple leaders. But we'll wait and see if somebody wants to tell us that.
Marvin's asking, any concern about salt spray versus a physical barrier, burlap?
Always a problem, always a concern about salt spray. But if the salt touches the burlap, it touches the plant. So if salt is a problem, this should have been had a barrier put out here along the edge that's that high in order to stop the salt before it touches the plant. So once you've got a burlap touching the plant, anything that touches the burlap soaks through the burlap and ends up on the plant itself. But I know that that's one of the things that people are trying to avoid, salt damage.
That's why it's part of the abomination. It's the way they also tried to quote unquote protect the plants.
Yeah.
When they should have had space.
I have seen it done well with the screens done a ways out from the plant. Okay. Another question that came up this week, and is kind of this time of year. The bulbs that you had at Christmas time, or New Year's, daffodils, tulips, hyacinths, they're not looking so good anymore, and people wonder, can I put them outside? Well, you can put them outside, but not yet. You put something that's in that state of growth outside, and you're just going to kill the top, probably well before the bulb was able to set itself up for next year. So you do have to just cut the flowers off of them and keep them someplace where they've got light until they gradually die back. And then when you put them in the ground, once you can dig in the spring, once these leaves begin turning yellow, you can put them in the spring, but put them in deeper, because forced bulbs are put in quite high up in a pot. They're not well protected out in a garden that way. They can heave out of the ground. They can get damaged by cold. They need to be deeper in the ground. So once the leaves begin to turn yellow and die back, even when there's still frost's happening outside in, say, early April, if you dig a deep hole and drop that pot all the way down into it, as the leaves finish dying back, you can fill the hole up and cover them right up. And meanwhile, they're down nestled into the ground and they're warm enough, but they can't go out now. Can't go out. It's too cold for them now. So spruce up your house with some forced branches. These are just 12-inch pieces of forsythia that you select because they have flower buds. Multiple buds indicates flower buds. The leaves are going to follow afterwards, and the leaf buds are the tiny ones. There's a tiny one right there underneath the opening flowers. So any of the shrubs that bloom first and leaf out afterwards are great candidates for forcing. If they leaf out at about the same time they flower or before they flower, like lilacs, they're not such great candidates. So this one is, it took about 12 days in water, in good light, in cool conditions, but not cold, to get the flower. So the lilac flower is emerging, but it's not going to be able to support that and the leaves that are coming out too. And you can see there's some damage, some winter damage happened inside the bud. See the brown tips on some of the flowers here and here. That's winter damage. These tips weren't damaged and have opened up. Oh, I should have remembered that I had that next one in there. Bit of damage there. What happened to my flowers? Maybe the plant didn't have quite enough time to close up the scales. Maybe there was some physical damage. Maybe there was a nutrient deficiency, but that happens all the time. Plants make lots of flowers. Dogwoods, flowering dogwoods. This is a Cherokee Princess. This one took probably 15 days sitting in good light and inside of the house to open up. But they're beautiful things, and it's fun to walk by and talk to them every day. Say, how are you doing? Cornelian cherry is another dogwood relative that blooms first, actually well before the forsythia, doesn't it, Steve? The Cornelian, yeah,
Usually a couple weeks at least.
and before the leaves come out. Braxy was always loved the plants we brought in the house. I've been able to get magnolia to show us its color, but I haven't been able to get a magnolia to open all the way out. I don't think we have enough light, or maybe it just can't draw up enough water through the stem. If you peel the stem at the bottom, it helps it absorb more water, or you can split the stem at the bottom. Anything you can do to get more water into the flower. Any questions coming in?
Yeah, Marvin is asking, we have an opinion on using tree diapers as soil protector, moisture provider?
If by tree diapers you mean those kind of felt-like rings that you put around the base of the tree, I haven't used them, and I can't really comment because I haven't put them out there to see what happens. We generally make a big area. I mean, we mulch and clear away all vegetation around the root ball, plus as far out as we expect the roots are going to be able to grow that first year. So we've got a big area and we generally mulch it. Does anyone use the tree diapers? And Marvin, you can tell us if that's what they're called. I didn't know that name.
No.
Does anybody recognize this plant?
What that vine is?
Yep. Everybody oohs and ahs over it when it's in bloom late in the summer. This is a trumpet vine, which is wonderful for hummingbirds. I mean, it is. They just love it. And big, bright orange, or there is a pink form, flowers on it, but a vicious plant for suckering.
I still remember the first really big one I saw was up on Michigan State's campus in the late 80s.
5 stories up building.
5 stories up, blooming all the way up and going across the roof. It was incredible. And you could see it popping up in areas of the lawn too.
Yep. I saw a whole greenhouse crushed under a trumpet vine that the greenhouse was no longer in use, and the trumpet vine had grown over the top and around the side, and it was bending all of the metal parts of the greenhouse. But they do sucker. I'm not surprised. I'd not be surprised in talking to this gardener to find out that suckers from that trumpet vine come up over here. But that's about the only
Not at all.
situation that I tell people, if you're going to grow a trumpet vine, grow where you mow for 20 feet around it, or grow where it's got pavement around it, because otherwise you are going to be fighting those suckers forever. At the Cleveland Botanical Garden, when we were walking around with, what was it, Mark? The gardener, the head gardener at the time, he was carrying on about how the architect and garden designer had put in the new children's garden a great big pergola. So 4 big posts in the ground and a pergola covering, and had put a trumpet vine on each post, and then garden all around that. And they would the gardeners would draw for the short straw each week to find out who it was who was going to have to walk through the garden and find all of the suckers coming up and take them out every single week, because they just sucker so badly. And
Marvin says, oh, sorry, continue. I'll tell you in a minute.
and as they get thicker in diameter, I've seen them. I doubt very much that they can crush this utility pole, but I've seen them crush 4x4s and wisteria too, just wrench them right out of the ground. Polymer filled. Oh, okay. So polymer filled so that you can charge them up with water. It's kind of like keeping a moist mulch on the ground. It's an interesting, and I'd like to see some of them at work. Let's see, are we planting any trees this year? You want to
I
try?
don't,
Nancy had a friend who had a trumpet vine sucker 50 feet away. Yeah,
no doubt.
I saw we gardened for Susan in Beverly Hills or Lathrop Village, had a trumpet vine that the suckers came up around the corner of the house and on the other side of the two-car wide driveway, concrete driveway. It was an amazing plant.
There's one trumpet vine they've sheared it into a ball, but then its sprouts have come up and gone up a tree and actually grabbed the limbs and are now going out on the tree limb. You saw that a couple years ago.
Who is this who's talking about the gator bags? Because gators, I've had people actually say, look, they have garbage bags over there. They're not garbage bags, they're bags. Bags set up to water. Okay. Diane in Waterville is talking about the gator
The
bag
gator bags.
that you fill with water and the water oozes out slowly, keeps the ball moist. And they're a lifesaver for trees in civic areas where
For sure.
there's not going to be somebody there watering them all the time. 'Cause
Yeah.
they-
Marvin's worked with both of them too.
We've been talking to several people in Florida this week, who are anxious to come back. And I told them, not yet. I got ice all over the place. We don't want to be back here now. But I have such admiration for the experience that you get from gardening in 2 very different regions. We interviewed people and wrote about that. And here's how you find particular articles, or what I sometimes do when I'm thinking about what should we talk about at Free4All, is go to What's Up. So Garden A to Z, our main menu is the home page has on it What's Up. If you click on What's Up, it'll take you to this page, which is our newsletter page. And this menu right here will be, if you're on a small screen like a phone or an iPad, this menu will be all the way at the bottom of the page. Sorry, it's the only way our programmer could set it up so that it worked on different size screens. So you have to scroll down to get to it. And at the bottom, there's the Ensemble Editions link. If you click that, it takes you to the seasons. We're in winter right now. We've got a week of winter left, the way that we split up the months, and then it starts being late winter. But if you click on winter, you'll get a list of all of the articles, the newsletters that we've posted during winter time, and you can look and see what topics are in those newsletters. Click on the newsletter. So I just clicked on the first one. And that takes you to, in this case, a newsletter that is in PDF form. And you can download the PDF. If you click on that, it'll open it so you can look at it, and then you can choose to download it. It's not going to download it automatically. It gives you the choice, so you look at it. And we ended up with, I think, 10 points about what people said. If you're learning to garden someplace else, we're working right now on learning the South Carolina garden area, Zone 8, quite different from here. But action items that people agreed, here's what things you need to look at, like go ahead, check your weather, what it's like, check the hardiness zone, find some public gardens in the area, find at least 2 garden centers you can go to that have I have well labeled plants. I was shocked when we were first going into the San Bernardino Valley area in California to find how poorly marked the plants were in most of the garden centers. I had to go a long way out to the main growers to find really well-marked plants, but that's a great way to learn what things they're selling and what things they're planting.
That just quickly, that previous picture, top picture of Martha's garden is shocking.
Yes, yeah. We'll
15 years difference, 16 now.
yeah, we'll have to show as things come up this spring, we'll have to show you what we've done with that area.
Yes,
Shocking indeed.
cool.
Go look at public gardens. We've been doing this and searching for the gardens that we call gardens, finding out that in Zone 8 they use a lot more shrubs and vines and fewer of the perennials that we're used to using. And it took us a while to figure out that of course they do. They garden through the winter. They want more woody things, more things that are there in the wintertime. Find the extension office. In California, I found the extension office and found out that I wasn't really supposed to be there, but that was after I talked with the extension agent for an hour and found all kinds of good stuff. Test the soil. I am here to admit, I'm sorry. I have sent soil from Massachusetts, from Vermont, from Wisconsin. I've sent it to Michigan State's lab because I bring it home with me and send the soil in to be tested. But we've also gone through testing in South Carolina. Clemson Extension is wonderful, great analysis of the soil test when it comes back, and very quick too. How to feel your soil to tell when it's there. Go look through the neighborhood, and try to celebrate the differences. Try not to grow the same things that you're growing. I just blows me away. Riding around the bike in Burdett's neighborhood in Florida. Where was she? Near Fort Myers. And I'm pretty sure that's a copperleaf. I know it is a house plant. Same thing happened when we were in San Diego. Steve's driving, and I'm googling eyed out the window looking at house plants growing on the freeway easements. Yeah, so it's very interesting to see what they look like. We have a gardener friend who gardened with us professionally for a long time, who started gardening through the winter by going to Hawaii in the wintertime, and eventually just stayed in Hawaii. And she sends me questions once in a while about how to prune something back. And I say, no bets, Sherry, no bets. I grow that as a plant that we throw out every year. I have no idea how to handle it when it's a 5-foot shrub. But that's how I fall down the rabbit hole, because our newsletters had a number of articles in it, in each one, like trying to figure out what to do with the tree and to gradually take it out. And nursery recommendations. It's fun to do. No questions?
Nope, and we're just about up time. It's 8 o'clock.
Okay, well then I'm going to make sure that people know this part that I've been avoiding for a little while. Trying to get over to Na's house and take a look at this. If you've got a small pot now at this time of year, remember that the days are short, and if you're bored, don't up pot it now. You can kill new plants. The question came from Na. She said, I bought these beautiful little plants. These are anthuriums. I can't think of what anthurium's other name is. I think of them as Hawaiian plants. She brought 3 little ones, brought them home and put the 3 of them into a big pot. And within days, they began wilting, as you see here. And if you look at the stems, they've turned yellow and become limp. They didn't dry up from lack of water. They became limp from rotting roots. And the reason that the roots rot when you do this with plants is we wrote it up in our number 31 newsletter, where we divided a clivia and showed people how to divide clivia. That if you put a small pot into a bigger pot, bigger than just one size bigger. One size bigger is what you want to do, just maybe an inch bigger around the outside edge. But if you put it into too big pot, the soil outside your little pot is absorbing water when you water. And that water is not going anyplace because there's no roots tapping that now fresh new soil. But the little plants you put in are drying out. You come and find them wilted, you add more water, and you end up rotting the root tips that are touching this now soggy new soil around the outside. So don't up pot into a bigger pot, especially not when plants are not growing real rapidly. Hold off, wait until, and the plants will tell you, usually at the end of February, things start growing again. I always loved it when our bay tree broke bud and started growing again, because it was a signal that it's time. The days are long enough to grow things again. And that's our newsletter number 31. So thank you for being with us tonight. We're going to go and release our dogs from their quiet zone and carry on here. If you've got questions for us that we can answer, we answer by email to individuals, and then we take the most wide application questions and put them into things like this, and also invite you to talk. We're hoping to stimulate that kind of conversation. But you can email us anytime or join us for the next Friday.
Marvin says, should I directly water the new roots?
If there's a way that you can water just the plug of the new plant, of the little plant, then you can try to do that. But the problem is that it's hard to do that and not end up with water getting into the new media and making it too wet. So that's it for this Free-for-All Friday. Remember, if you have a garden legacy vision and you can share it with us, you can write us a note, or if you've got pictures of something that you think is applicable. We're composing the last webinar of Weekend Walkabout Season 5. And if you're a contributor or a subscriber, you'll be with us on March 1st when we do that. Our next Free-for-All Friday is February 14th, and we'll be coming to you from Youngstown, Ohio that night, because we're presenting our latest take on simplifying the garden as part of the Fellows Riverside Gardens Winter Seminar. If you're in the Youngstown area, it is a great garden center. And they unfortunately had a big water main break nearby. So the seminar is being held at a church meeting hall, a big event hall nearby. But the place itself is wonderful. So thank you for being here. And
Yep. Thank you all. Have a great week and see you next week.
see you next week.